What is cybersecurity? How is it different from security? Is having a guard at an office security? Of course, yes. So, how is security and cybersecurity different? How does it correlate with privacy? And what is it that is different in data protection then? This and more in a fascinating conversation with someone who has wealth of experience, been in many companies like Yahoo, LinkedIn, and has recently founded a company called Anzena. And I'm talking about none other than Ganesh Krishnan, who's the CEO of this new company. Let's go and talk to him about all these interesting questions.
Hello, and welcome to the FIT4Privacy podcast with Punit Bhatia. This is the podcast for those who care about their privacy. Here, your host, Punit Bhatia, has conversations with industry leaders about their perspectives, ideas, and opinions relating to privacy, data protection, and related matters. Be aware that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are not legal advice. Let us get started.
Welcome, Ganesh, to Fit4Privacy podcast.
Thank you, Punit. Glad to be here.
It's pleasure to have you. So, Ganesh, I know you're a cybersecurity pro and everything, but when you think of GDPR, what's the one word that comes to your mind?
I think it tries to be fairly comprehensive, trying to address privacy end to end. It certainly has had its set of positives and negatives.
Yeah, like everything in life, there's no positive without negative.
Yeah.
Indeed. So tell me your story. How did you end up where you are, and what is your intersection or interaction with privacy? How did you get into cybersecurity? Because you
Yeah.
have many years of experience, of course.
Yeah. So I started in the cybersecurity field right out of college, my master's at Purdue, where I was a research assistant for a cybersecurity research lab, which is now called Sirius. And then from there, I joined Intel Architecture Labs in Oregon, writing cybersecurity software for VPNs and things like that as a software engineer. And then, got tired of the rain in Oregon and actually decided to move to the Bay Area to work for this company called Securify, which was started by Tahir El-Gamal, who's behind the committees at Netscape, also behind the El-Gamal signature standard, which became the digital signature. And so got to work with a lot of great cybersecurity experts there. I'm so till date so thankful for that. And then as part of that, we were actually cybersecurity consultants in 1998, 99, like when very few people knew what the field was. And then sort of we used to do work for companies like Yahoo and other companies. So I ended up joining Yahoo around 1999, 2000, 2001, I think, sometime then. And then, sort of we were a couple of people in the Yahoo cybersecurity function. We were called Paranoids, which is still a brand today. And so, was one of the first few people there, sort of spent 8 or 9 years there, was running security at Yahoo. And I left 2010. I left Yahoo to build the cybersecurity function at LinkedIn, was there for 5 or 6 years, and then basically went to Atlassian for a few years to run their cybersecurity function, identity function. And then I felt that, hey, I was a security practitioner for too long and I might go native, but I was still passionate about the field, that I felt that I could contribute to the field. So I ended up co-founding a cybersecurity company in the cloud security space in 2017, which then got acquired by Sophos in 2019. Sophos is also a cybersecurity company, as you probably are aware. Spent a few years there and then left early last year to start another cybersecurity company, because guess what? Now I'm on the other side. If you are an entrepreneur and you start a company, every problem appears to be 10x bigger. And so here I am with another company called Anzena.
Good. That's interesting. So you would be the right person to ask a very basic question, because with so much of history you have, I mean, cybersecurity is a term we've started to use of late. And then I say late, in last few years. 20 years ago, nobody was talking cybersecurity. Some were talking security or hardware security. Then infrastructure security. And slowly and gradually we moved into online and digital and cyber. So how do you differentiate, or still do you differentiate between security and cybersecurity for a layman? Let's start there and then we'll build up.
Yeah, that's a good question. The way I differentiate is, just in my head, cybersecurity is anything related to online, right? Like cyber. But security kind of includes even physical security and things like that, right? So that's how I simply differentiate from the lane, right? If you say security, it can mean a security guard, or it can also mean a cybersecurity person. I've had that happen to me, saying, "Oh, I'm a security person." Somebody asked me, "Are you a security guard.
That's going very broad on security then, but that's interesting dimension. In fact, I was in a conference yesterday and there was an interesting debate. Somebody saying, is it privacy or is it data protection? And somebody literally going far and saying, GDPR does not mention privacy at all. And then there was a good debate between the two people. And I wanted to delve into that. So that's security and cyber security. Of course, security can go into the physical security, the building security, the facility security, but let's stay with the digital aspect of it and then cyber security. And then we have two terms called data protection and privacy. Now, how do you see them and how and where do they fit into security or cyber security in your view?
Yeah, I mean, data protection is a key element of cybersecurity, right? So, like, why do people care about cybersecurity? At the end of the day, if you just peel everything out, right, ransomware, this, that, all the things you hear about, they're trying to protect their assets and data, right? So they might have IP or they might have very sensitive customer data, depending on the business. So data protection is at the heart of everything, right? So it is definitely important to protect data from a security standpoint, where security really refers to the mechanism. And from a privacy standpoint, it refers to what data people collect and how they get consent, like what is the right of the person providing that data. And security becomes the mechanism. So they are important across the board. That's really the key.
And just to add on, because I started with conversation yesterday, and it was a very volatile, or not a volatile, it was a very interesting, fascinating two viewpoints, everyone defending themselves. And then we concluded that you can put very good security in an application, and it may be a very good secure application, but does it ensure privacy? That's a different dimension.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't, right? Because you may not be collecting the right data, or you may not be handling the data according to how the person wants the data handled.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can have the most secure system and it's not providing the privacy controls you desire.
Yeah. Normally we say there's no privacy without security, but security by all in itself does not mean there is privacy. And that's the differentiation we need to make for people. And that leads me to another question. Since you mentioned you were there for 20 plus years in this field, I like to say, how do you see the evolution of cybersecurity? Because you've seen coming from physical security, online security, digital security, and so on and so forth. How do you see this evolution in next few years? I know nobody has a crystal glass that we can say this is how it will be, but what's your vision view?
Yeah, so security, sort of certainly has garnered the importance that we all desire. When I started in security, right, nobody knew what it was, and I was just trying to get people to understand what we were trying to do, like why it is actually important to do this. And I think that at least people are realizing now, like, hey, security is important. We need to have if I'm an enterprise, I need to have a security organization. I need to have some investment in basically securing my systems. And I think that's a great leap from where things were like 20 years ago when I started. When you look at threats, they have kind of, the attacks have gotten more and more sophisticated as the basic stuff has kind of shut down, right? Earlier it was, I didn't have a firewall, so somebody, got in through a port and compromised your system or whatever. That's less and less now, even though that's still there. Like the basic security problems are still there. But the attacks have gotten more sophisticated. But while I say that, the types of things that people worry about are still kind of the same, right? Like malware, ransomware, spyware, phishing. Phishing is like in the last 10 to 15 years, right? And I think I first saw phishing in like 2004 or something like that. Of course, now with application security getting more important, you've got the supply chain, application security. People have migrated to the cloud massively over the last 5 or 10 years. That's changed the security landscape. So those are some of the, if you look at sort of how the sort of what gets published in the industry. And then what doesn't get talked about a whole lot is, from a cybersecurity perspective, is people. People are the biggest vulnerability and threat. We don't talk about it enough. We just brush it off saying, let's train them. But there's a lot more we can and we need to do. And last but not the least is the scalability of the security organization. So the problem has gone from, do you have a security organization, to figuring out, can it actually do its job? Because if you think about a security organization, it covers every single thing that a company does across every single function. That's a pretty broad charter. So how does your security team scale to cover the important things? How does your security team keep up with your business? Those are really things that don't get talked.
That makes sense. And the question then is, if someone is a CIO or CISO, more importantly, or head of information security, what kind of mindset or culture do they need to instill in an organization? Because end of the day, security or privacy, it's about instilling a culture in an organization. So
That's right.
what kind of culture would you expect and how do you go about it?
Yeah. So security, so when the default reaction, and this is actually true of any field, not just security. Like when you have a problem, you want to get an organization or a set of people to kind of focus on that problem and fix it. That's where most companies are in their journey of cybersecurity and even privacy. Privacy is probably a little bit behind because of GDPR. There's maybe a few privacy people in every company, trying to do the same. And so people are building these teams, but the way it actually gets better, like you correctly alluded to, is eventually it has to be everybody's job, and that's easier said than done. That is what you call a cultural transformation, is that it's not just a security team or a privacy team says, oh, this is important, because they cannot inflict change on a 10,000 person company when you have a 10-person or a 50-person security team or a 5-person privacy team, right? So it has to really become part of the way companies do business and the way companies do work. So that cultural transformation is what CISOs need to be striving towards, sort of as they build out their organization. And that's a hard problem, right? So you start with certain areas of the organization. So I know some companies start with like IT and development organizations, right? And then, but there is a need to kind of move across the board, because guess what, even salespeople are handling sensitive data. Going back to our data protection aspect, right? Salesforce has a lot of sensitive data that
Yeah.
salespeople have, right? So it has to kind of go from the security team's problem to shift left, which is what's happening in the application security space, to almost like shift broad. Like the entire company has to figure it out, right? And they
Yeah.
have to be given, it's not just training, because that's a one-way street. We know that training isn't effective across the board, right? Like the current security training, I like to say, is, hey, it's like exercising once a year. Do you expect to be fit by exercising once a year? No, the answer is no. So you have to kind of exercise on an ongoing basis, like few times a week, 3 times a week. This is what fitness experts recommend, right? And it has to be that way, right? It has to be integrated into your workflow, the way you do things. And there has to be systems, processes, and people that actually enable to make that happen. Ultimately, security teams are facilitators. Privacy teams are facilitators, right? They provide the best practices and guidance. It's the organization that needs to own and execute.
Absolutely. And in that context, one of the challenges with cybersecurity landscape is that it's ever evolving. New
Mhm.
technologies are coming, new threats are emerging, new attackers are coming, new ways of attacking systems are coming up. And in that sense, what actionable actions or tangible actions, I would say, can an organization take?
Tangible,
Basic level, high level, I would say.
for a cultural transformation, or like what is the like, or to combat those new threats?
Yeah, to combat those new threats, because these new attacks are surfing coming up every day. We hear this organization is attacked, so it's not a question of if your organization will be attacked. It's a
Mhm.
question of when it will be attacked, and
Mhm.
you need to be ever ready. You
Mhm.
cannot say we implemented something last month and it's good enough. You need to
Right.
continually scan the market. You need to continually look into implement new tools. Implement. So, what do you recommend in that context? What can be the basic things that can be done in terms of reducing the number of breaches, reducing the number of ransomware attacks, and staying on top of the security posture or risk?
Yeah. So there isn't a silver bullet, right? I will say that before I start to answer. This isn't a place where there is, oh, you do this and you're fine.
Yeah,
You're right that it's an ever changing landscape, it's an ever expanding landscape. Because if you look at IT itself, it's decentralizing, right? Employees are able to do more and more. Like I can connect some application for productivity that my enterprise doesn't support much more easily than I would be able to use, I was able to even 10 years ago, right? SaaS applications, right? So every employee is becoming a quasi IT person. So even the surface area is expanding, right? So you literally have to attack it from different approaches. One is the traditional risk-based approach. You have to say, hey, what is my business? What are the biggest areas that threats that I'm trying to protect against? And make sure you have enough investment, not just in technology, but also people and process. So it's the security is also about people, process, and technology, right? You
yeah,
can't solve, you can't throw technology at every problem, right? So you have to kind of address it at that broader level. right? So that's a risk-based approach. The other thing is also, do you have your organization equipped with the information they need to figure out what's important and assess and report threats as they see them, right? That's another
Yeah.
aspect.
No, I think very well said. Look at people, process, technology perspective, and take the look at risk posture, and then take it risk-based approach. That's the only way to do it, whether it's security or privacy. But that leads me to another question, which sometimes people ask, and somebody asked me a while back. We're living in a modern world, and everything is in the cloud.
Right.
You know, all the data, all the systems are getting into cloud. So, do I really? And that's a question somebody asked, and I just paraphrase, do I really need to think about privacy and cybersecurity and all this in this case? Because my data is with somebody else, they will protect me. And I was like, no, but I like to have your view from cybersecurity standpoint. My data is in cloud. What am I supposed to do? I just bought the application. I bought MS Office 365. It's with Microsoft. They will do the best.
Yeah. So that's a great point. So I will start with an amazing quote that I learned from when I was at Yahoo, which is, the only thing you cannot outsource in life is responsibility, right?
Yes.
And what your question was about, outsourcing responsibility. So no organization should outsource responsibility of any kind, which includes privacy and security,
Yeah.
right? So just because you contracted with Microsoft or Amazon or Google to put your servers there doesn't mean they're going to protect it. They say it themselves. They talk about shared responsibility. We'll be responsible for the stuff that we run. You're responsible for the stuff that you run. In fact, I would go say a step further. Make sure you feel the responsibility for the whole thing, because it's your decision to put
Yeah.
your stuff on Google, Amazon, or Microsoft. So as
Indeed.
simple as that, right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything that your data is in the cloud. It's actually, in fact, it's out of your control. So you need to feel more responsibility to protect
Indeed, and I think that was the very similar answer I gave them, because I also linked it to few years back. I was the head of vendor management at a company, and some of the managers used to say we outsourced it, and you
it.
hit the right word. When you outsourced it, it's more important to manage the contract. It's more important to understand and evaluate and trust, rather not trust, verify
Yeah.
that they are doing what you were doing when it was with you, and
Yeah.
that's more important. Now, in all this setup in an ever evolving world and all these challenges and complexity, what is it that you are doing right now, and how are you helping in cybersecurity world? Because you mentioned that you set up a new startup now. So what is it all about?
Yeah. So what we feel is needed in cybersecurity is, if you look at sort of the some of the problems in the cybersecurity industry. I mentioned a bunch, right? Like cloud, AppSec, and
Yeah.
supply chain. There's many of them, right? Like ransomware. There's lots of products that are dealing with it, finding issues. What we don't see is, as the risk surface expands, like I mentioned, every employee is becoming a quasi IT person. Do we
Mm-hmm.
have solutions that basically make every employee a quasi CISO, a quasi security person? And to do this, it's not just about training them, because we know that those are ineffective. People have their EAs or their kids take the training. I've had anecdotes of this all the time, because it's a more of a compliance thing, but training in terms of changing outcomes, right? So what we need is a system that can basically engage employees in an empathetic, constructive, empowering fashion, and then figure out how to get them to deal with their own security issues. We talk about solving the human problem in cybersecurity, because 80% plus of breaches is externally published in the Verizon data breach report from last year. Is 82% of breaches are human centered. And we talk about fixing the employee, fixing the human. Well, guess what? You can't fix the human if you call them the weakest link, or if you think that they are the weakest. So what we are doing is building a cybersecurity product, not just for the cybersecurity team, but for the rest of the employees, to get them engaged, involved, and better contributing, positively contributing to fix cybersecurity, trust, and privacy issues.
So
So
it's
that's basically.
collaborative community in an organization, including employees.
That's right. That's right. It's an engagement platform. It's not a training platform. It's an engagement platform where there is, of course, there is contextual training. There is contextual awareness of issues based on what employees are doing, right? So if you share a document that has sensitive data, that's the best time I can reach out to you saying, "Hey, Puneet, here is the best way to share a sensitive document." Give you a 1-minute video. You're more inclined to view it. You're more inclined to retain the knowledge. and then I'll incentivize you to participate, and positively reward you if you participate and engage in the system. I won't penalize you. The current security stuff is punitive. I'm trying to get you. I'm not trying to get you. I'm just trying to get you to participate to make your own stuff better.
Yeah. And do you have any timeline? Because I saw on your website last time I went that you are creating a joining list or a waiting list.
Yes.
Do you have a timeline? End of this year, next year, sometime you'll be launching?
Yeah. So we already have a like an early version of the product that we are working with our initial customers on. So anybody that's interested can sign up on our website and launch, and basically we'll reach out to them and work with them. And we'll tell them more, of course. I just gave you an overview. And then in terms of our website, we'll be launching a version which has a lot more information shortly. And Zena.ai is the place to go, and just sign up for a beta, and we'll reach out to you and we'll give you more information at this time.
Okay. I think we seem to share a common philosophy in the sense that I delivered a talk some time back saying, do your staff care about privacy and security trainings? They don't, because for them, it's another tick in the box exercise. Next 15 minutes, I have to do it. I'll do it when the last mail comes, or some of them are smarter. They do it at the first email. Don't wait for the last. But then eventually it's a next exercise. If there's an exam, it's an overhead anyhow. But you need to inculcate interest. You need to create that synergy to say, why does it matter to me and in my job? Right. And that's the relevant part. And you can't be punitive saying 97% people have not done it, so we have to do it, and we have to achieve 98% target. That doesn't work.
Yeah. What we do today is CYA, right? CYA training in across the board. It's privacy, cybersecurity. Even look at other aspects of HR and compliance. It's all CYA.
And what do you mean by CYA? Because that's the first time I hear the term.
Cover your behind. That's basically what it is. So check the box, is cover your behind, so you're not caught with a compliance problem.
Indeed. I call it tick in the box exercise. So it's the same one. Okay. So now if a CISO is listening to this, or maybe CPO or a DPO or a privacy professional is listening to this, what would be your one message to them as a cybersecurity expert?
Well, I'm sure I have been in the field for, a while. That doesn't mean I know their environment. I think they know their environment best. And, to me, it would be like, hey, how can you decentralize more of the cybersecurity privacy aspects so that the rest of the organization takes more ownership? That's how we win. That's how the cybersecurity team wins, because they scale better, the employees contribute more, so democratize things more. And if there are, and it depends on what journey your company is at. But if you are at a point where you have a good team, then you should look at democratizing things more.
Very well said. Democratize and pass it on, because you are a facilitator, as you said earlier, and that's a very wonderful message. So with that, I would say it's time to say thank you so much, Ganesh. It was wonderful to have you and explore the dimensions.
Well, thank you so much, Punit. It was wonderful to be here. Great discussion. So thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for listening. If you liked the show, feel free to share it with a friend and write a review. If you have already done so, thank you so much. And if you did not like the show, don't bother and forget about it. Take care and stay safe. Fit4Privacy helps you to create a culture of privacy and manage risks by creating, defining, and implementing a privacy strategy that includes delivering scenario-based training for your staff. We also help those who are looking to get certified in CIPPE, CIPM, and CIPT through on-demand courses that help you prepare and practice for certification exam. Want to know more? Visit www.fit4privacy.com. That's www.FIT4Privacy.com. If you have questions or suggestions, drop an email at hello@fit4privacy.com. Until next time, goodbye.